Ladies and gentlemen of the crypto space, we're live on a Tuesday, July 6th at 11:25 a.m. A little early today. We got stuff on my mind, and I want to make sure we have enough time to get it out. I got a bunch of stuff to do today, but we also got to talk. We need to understand the system in which we're interacting with, which is the whole point of the title of today's stream. You know, a great statement was made recently by Drunken Miller. He said, high level, that folks that know how to navigate the system are the ones that benefit from the policies that the central banks engage, or what they do, or the acts and activities that they do, what they do with QE, what they do with the Fedgery, the Fed plus Treasury, and the bypassing of commercial bank money creation processes. The ones that benefit are the market actors that navigate the system with strategy. And this title today is part of that strategy, and understanding that we have very large macro cycles that have occurred, will occur again. And the better we understand them, the more we're able to allocate capital to achieve capital gains based on inevitable market action. So, to me, what's so obvious is two things: transitory deflationary events, collapse of 2000, tech bubble, collapse of '08, and obviously 20, the 2020 and COVID. These are the largest events of the last 20 years, 20 plus years. And they were net inflationary after the deflationary pressures were mitigated by coordinated currency manipulation by central banks globally. Good or bad, we could always have a conversation about that. And I'd argue it's just immoral and not righteous, and there's something wrong about it. And that's exactly what strong money advocates talk about. And that's the whole uh, hard money Bitcoin movement, really, is that the central banks have perverted our global monetary systems. And we want out, we opt out. So, to understand these systems, um, and how to allocate capital to gain from these pretty much inevitable, these predictable events, we have to put labels. And the label is deflation and inflation. It's common topics that I talk about with regard to evaluating the viability of crypto assets, but at the macro financial level, um, it's a little different. So we talk about deflation in crypto, that it's basically a reduction in supply. We talk about inflation as an increasing supply, like proof of stake is generally an inflationary monetary policy. There's more assets over a period of time. Um, Inflation and deflation basically mean up or down, more or less. So it's different at the macro financial level because um, it's a debt based system. And we have components of a debt based system in the crypto space. But predominantly, when these two terminologies are used, I'm referring to circulating supply, increases and decreases and then you have incentivized supply disruption and stuff like that. But that doesn't exist at the macro financial level. So at the legacy finance, from the legacy finance perspective, deflation is where asset prices collapse. And you see that most obviously at the security indexes, the large Dow Jones Industrial Average, Nasdaq, so on and so forth, the S&P. And that's the easiest way to describe to someone um, a deflationary or transitory deflationary event. I mean, if you look at the Dow Jones Industrial Average, or whatever desired index, it's up since ever. It doesn't matter these deflationary events. So that's like, long term. That's where you have a time horizon that is larger than any period of transitory deflation. Now, the entire role of central banks is to, they like to think that they're heading in the right direction, but really, from a reductionist standpoint, what I talk about is all they do is handle transitory deflationary events because they're not making the financial system better. Nothing in their job does anything good in the long term. They're always trying to achieve structural inflation. What does that even mean? They want to inflate the monetary supply. Um, Now they currently have to because of the debt to GDP ratio. So they can't really service all their debt obligations unless they trigger structural inflation, which melts the debt burden, and they're able to then be in a position to actually service the debt. Um, a lot of it is indeed beyond my full comprehension. For instance, we have a debt ceiling, which they're going to raise. And why have a debt ceiling? And doesn't make any sense. To the point where probably the best description is it's a perverted system. So as we talk about these concepts, we talk from the crypto perspective and how to handle inflation because many would classify crypto assets as risk assets. So when there's inflation, people are risk on. That's where the capital flows, and that's why the price increases. And it gets complicated because the price is denominated in dollars. Everything's denominated in dollars. So everyone's life revolves around the dollar as a cost basis. And that drives me nuts. That's a somewhat of a mutually exclusive concept to discuss. But what I like to do is reduction and try and make these types of conversations as simple as possible to understand. And that's what I'm going to get into. Let's do this. Today's episode is sponsored by Change Angel, the non-custodial swap exchange for social goods. Stop depositing on exchanges, not your keys, not your crypto, non-custodial DeFi, or nothing at all. I got a news article up, old one, but I keep talking briefly about, for continuity purposes, what I was talking about. So we know that every couple of years, 3, 4 times in the last 20 years, we have a very strong deflationary impulse, which is visibly seen in the collapse of the broad equities markets, 50, 60, 70% crash. And that triggers the central bank to do whatever the hell they do to juice the economy, the 4-letter acronyms and all the shit they did back in 2020 for the pandemic. QE, infinity, we have unlimited money, we could do whatever we want, all that rhetorical nonsense that they spew. In times like those, what's most important is how do you have protection? You can put the label on it, deflation, but what you really want to know is what assets go up in value, what assets go up in price. And the assets that go up in price are treasuries and bonds. The capital flows out of the broad equity space and the inflated assets collapse, but there's a huge amount of capital that needs to be deployed. The first two stops are cash and bonds. Um, but you could say quite often that this time is different, and it is from a macro financial standpoint as well. But it kind of always was the case that cash, who keep nobody keeps cash around for a long period of time. But nowadays, especially, the point being, cash is the last bag that no one wants to hold. With the M2 and debasement that has occurred, good way to describe it. Cash is melting. It's like an ice cube that's melting. So now, more than ever, it's imperative to get rid of cash as fast as possible. So in a deflationary event, capital flows to cash and bonds because they're the most liquid. They're seen as the safe haven. And what'll happen is those become the risk on trade. As bonds start to skyrocket in value, that's exactly what risk on is. It's going up. And what goes straight up, comes straight down inevitably. But it goes up too fast, it's going to come down just as fast. So 2020, bonds screamed up, and that's an opportunity. So, how do we traverse that landscape? A reality that we know a deflationary impulse is coming. And the Fed's job is to just paper over it to keep the chart going up. I don't have enough screen to do hand gestures. But let me see if I can pull up a chart real quick. SPX. I wish I could do a yearly. Monthly? How far can we go? So there, 2000s in there, obviously. 2008. Here's the 2020 collapse. It's a blip on the radar. So bonds scream higher during a deflationary event. And then eventually the central banks paper over it and the system keeps on chugging along. Now, we know how to handle a deflationary event by holding what I've been talking about, treasuries. And for me, I'm opting for short term 3 months, T bills. And I pretty much migrated all cash that I typically held in a bank account into T bills. And I get a salary into the brokerage, buy T bills. Every drop of cash that I have is now denominated in T bills. And at the end of the month, when I get a credit card bill, I sell some T bills and I pay the credit card bill. I don't want exposure to cash. I don't think it has any meaningful purpose to hold. It doesn't do anything. So this is like what Druckenmiller was talking about. People that know how to navigate the market can capitalize more effectively. People, the vast majority of persons have a bank account and savings, and they try and save for a future, a house, a car. But that doesn't work anymore. It hasn't worked in a long time, but nowadays it doesn't work anymore. Like really, like oh yeah, it doesn't work anymore type stuff. And it's hard to tell people that what they're doing is wrong. And the first person that's hard to tell to is yourself that what you're doing is wrong by saving and accumulating cash. It's just going to cause potential, most likely pain, and it's not going to achieve the desired result. The desired result is you accumulate enough capital for a car, but next year the car is $4,000 more. And the year after, it's $8,000 more because the cost of goods and services and freight and shipping and all that. Well, it's a service, but point being, everything involved in the car sitting at a Ford dealership is now more expensive. The car's price goes up. So you just say, let's say you say 35 grand for a new car, massive a number. And then you go to the car dealership and the car is all of a sudden 39. Oh, there's a supply shortage. There's not enough cars going around, and there's a bidding war, and there's a premium on the car on the lot, and it's 42. Saving doesn't get you anywhere. So it's not that traversing the financial system is going to guarantee results, but it's going to put you in a position that you're at least on par, on a level playing field with the folks that manage money, the wealthy, the drunken millers. And I really like that video clip that's circulating on Twitter right about now. I mean, he's angry because we should all feel empathy most, most notably for folks that try and save because technically they're doing the honorable thing. But saving is not a path to success. In fact, it's the antithesis. What the federal government has done with monetary policy has caused saving to be a failure of self-fiduciary responsibility. That's what Robert Kiyosaki so, um, you know, um, not so nicely depicts that savers are losers. It's a derogatory terminology, but ultimately there's losing and winning. And with 22% debasement of M2, whether they want to account for it with accounting or not, the amount of circulating currency significantly increased in 2020 and is continuously increasing every day. You cannot save. You cannot outperform debasement with a job, with a regular job. And clearly the wealthy are in a whole nother, you know, category of conversation. You're making 400 grand a year, you could probably outperform the basement. If you're making 20, 30, 40, $50,000 a year, an average salary or a little bit less, you're not going to be able to outperform the basement. So what I like to talk about is methodology that's actually implementable. And I want to get to the other end of the conversation, which is crypto, because that's the inflation protection. But from a deflation protection standpoint, I really like this methodology that I've implemented, where cash from a salary, everything goes to T-bills and a brokerage, T-bills, T-bills, T-bills. And at the end of the month, you consolidate all bills, every payment to a credit card. So everything you're buying, and you need to have proper financial management. Don't spend more than you make. That's number one rule. Um, and if you're spending more than you make, that's the first thing you have to fix. Stop. Sell the house. Sell the apartment. Downsize. Instead of a two-bedroom, it's a one-bedroom. Instead of a queen size, it's a twin. Instead of two separate beds for the kids, it's bunk beds. I'm tempted to get bunk beds for the kids anyway, just because it's good for them socially. Better than for them to interact with one another, and that type of environment is something that's good for them. So that's it's a hard thing to turn down what we want in favor of what is better. So you have to spend less than you make, but then the methodology to take all income and direct it towards T-bills, and at the end of the month you get your credit card, your consolidated list of expenditures into a single payment. You liquidate the T-bills you need to pay the bill, and you pay it. You could literally link your credit card directly to a brokerage account and pay directly from the liquidated T-bills, the capital that you get from liquidating the T-bills. But then the process remains salary to T-bills, and that's where you keep cash. And how you and that'll be effective deflation protection. So when this thing comes down, I mean, it's hard to show here because it's so incredibly inflated. But let's say you have a nice contraction. I don't know, somewhere around there. What you follow the TA boys on Twitter for a price target, but say at 50%, 2,700. No, what is that? 2,150. That'd be an incredible. There's no way it's coming down. Maybe it will. That'd be down to the bottom of the 2020 collapse. That'd be crazy. So, but in a deflationary event, guess who's going to make out like a bandit? The person with the T-bills. They're going to make a lot of return on their money. If you're holding dollars, you're not going to make anything. And T-bills are relatively stable in price. Where the interest rates go up and down a couple of percent. So you're holding a relatively stable asset that you can sell for cash pretty much in seconds. So you can service your credit card debt on demand, just pay it the next day, because it's a T+1 settlement time for T-bills. And that'll cover that process. And now, obviously, there's savings and for the future to carry value into the future, because T-bills you don't have a time horizon on T-bills. That's not how you do anything to achieve financial freedom. But you can make a lot of money by securing the short term and be protective against deflationary events. And now, obviously, is breaking off a portion of capital for the other side of the story, which is inflation protection. Because to accommodate a deflationary event, they paper over it and they're debasing the currency. And they want to trigger structural inflation, and they're going to have to, because how else are they going to service whatever 150 bajillion percent debt to GDP, 130%, I think it is for the U.S. But bear in mind, then you get into like conversations about Japan, and it's 200 and something percent debt to GDP. and they're net deflationary. They're still deflationary. So this is like what Stephen Van Meter talks about and Brent Johnson talks about. I mean, this entire system wants to deflate so bad. It's so grossly inflated, it wants to deflate. But along all the while, the central banks are trying to keep it inflated and they're debasing the currency. So we have debasement, we have an aggressively deflationary global economy. So that just leaves anyone with cash screwed. Cash is the last bag no one wants to hold. Out of cash. I have no interest in holding cash. And, we all know the story of crypto. That's what we talk about with regard to inflation protection. And for new entrants, sure. Um, New entrants, you have to get experience first. So you have to have dollars. Start with dollars because most people are not accustomed to real interest on their money. Um, People are accustomed to 0% in a bank account, but if you could get 3, 4, 5% on Aave, 10, 20, 30% on other platforms, Curve, Yearn, Convex, that changes the entire story because that's your base place to deploy capital. And you have to deploy capital to places you understand. So you have to get an education first before you deploy capital. So inflation protection is still not going to be, well, at least in the deflationary event, cash in the crypto space, well, Tether is susceptible to a deflationary event because of the amount of commercial paper backing it. You could have a significant depeg in an event like that. I'm less worried about DAI and USDC. DAI is obviously big part USDC back nowadays, and I basically have no hesitation really about GUSD. So cash in the crypto space, GUSD is going to be your least risky play, and likely USDC as well. But you know, people have their uncertainty and doubt nowadays. So that's a great place to get your feet wet with regard to allocating capital to earn real yield and playing around with DeFi protocols and these smart contract players. We've seen no issues with regard to Yearn in a long time, and Convex and Curve have been rock solid. That's a great learning experience. But it's not really inflation protective because cash would need to earn, if it earned 25%, that's 3% real interest on top of the 22% M2 debasement. So that's not going to get you to where you want to be. And, that comes to the whole reality of how the general public views the crypto space. Deploying capital to like Doge and Shiba Watsu and all these garbage assets, 10,000% yield, really in a place of financial desperation. And it's disconcerting. And we all should have empathy for everyone. That's why I love the forum, because everyone's trying to help each other. We really need it nowadays. We need people to have our back and to help us understand things. So help your family members to achieve deflation protection and inflation protection. So after cash in the crypto space, dollar cost average in the Bitcoin, that's cool. You know where Bitcoin is going to be in 10 years. Yeah, if you want the original purpose of a savings bond fulfilled, it's not done with a savings bond. The original purpose of a savings bond truly for the last 11 years has been shown to be fulfilled by Bitcoin. Dollar cost averaging in the Bitcoin is a great place to store wealth into the future. It's simple. There's no complexity in the process. And most crypto brokerages, Gemini, have auto purchases. Purchase $50 a week in Bitcoin. At least you're heading in the right direction. And Ethereum is going to be net deflationary when London gets released. EIP 1559. That's exciting. You guys know how I talk about inflation and deflation. It's basically the entire topic of conversation today. And if Ethereum becomes a net deflationary protocol, and this is a different type of deflation than what we were talking about with regard to the macro financial system and the deflation of the debt bubble. This is more of a deflation of circulating supply because EIP 1559 has a burn component, which effectively reduces the amount of circulating supply. So uh, miners will still get yield, but in theory, the amount burned from gas fees will be greater than the increase in emissions. So you have a net deflationary protocol. Less circulating supply, and now you get into supply and demand mechanics that trigger price appreciation. So basically, Ethereum's something cool to DCA as well. And then you get more speculative as you branch out from Bitcoin and Ethereum. A lot of the today's stream is the approach to take when talking to people that have no idea about any of this world. I kind of thought of this stream because of over the weekend. I was talking to family members and trying to help them and tell stories, which is what we've been doing for the last year and a half. But I quickly realized that the stories that I tell are like alien. The stories, it's in a whole nother wavelength of ideology and thought processes compared to what the general public thinks about. So what I've been thinking about more and more is how to present these stories in a digestible way, such that a person that has thinks in dollars and dollars can appreciate and respond to what I'm trying to convey and educate. Um, so it came off well, and you know, I, it was a good weekend, and I was able to convey some good ideas. Um, but I always say we can do better. So that's where we are with regard to doing better. We now have expressed in this stream a way to manage daily finances while being deflation protective. We now have a very simple methodology for outperforming debasement without taking much risk and without having to really change your ideology. You take your cash, you move it into GUSD, you get 3, 4, 5%, which is going to decrease the debasement of your value. And as you branch off into increasingly sophisticated capital deployments, Yearn, Convex, Curve directly, and you're able to somewhat keep up with debasement. 20%, you can probably get 20% nowadays on decent cash positions, especially with incentives. Um, and then we talked about Bitcoin and Ethereum, DCA. Now that's obviously going to carry wealth into the future. In 10 years' time, they're going to be worth significantly more money. And then it gets much more complicated, the topics that we've talked about most recently. Cash flow and business modeling. You can't begin to talk with family and new people not exposed to this space with concepts like that. That's not digestible. You can talk to entrepreneurs about that. Like if you have family that's a business owner or someone that has real estate, runs a real estate business, that you could totally talk to them and be like, and express what we've discussed. In fact, I've talked to you guys uh, from a real estate perspective on how I look at the crypto space. It's extremely analogous and comparable. So I guess this is where my wife says, know your audience. You have to tailor your presentation to whom you're conversing with. Um, so I guess what we've done in this stream is we've tailored the conversation to a variety of different mindsets, new entrants, previous streams, obviously the more experienced participants. I really talk about like trading. It's just not a methodology that I really am interested in. You know why? It involves too much work. I'm not interested in work. I'm interested in doing all these things I do so I can work less. And that's really should be, well, it's obviously an appreciated perspective because the vast majority of people are buying Doge because they want to make it rich. They want to not work, but that's where the education, you feel empathy for the lack of education. Because being rich doesn't mean you're not going to work. You have to know how to manage the capital. As Drunken Miller says, you need to be able to traverse the system and understand the system. Those are the people that are able to turn the management of capital into the business. So you don't have to work. You have to work managing the capital, but you don't have to do traditional labor or work for someone else to generate an income. Instead, you're generating income from the capital that you worked hard to get. Interesting stuff. I completely neglected everyone's comments. This is an entire monologue. This entire stream. So let me do a little bit of comments. I'm going to wrap it up. I'm sorry, guys. Marco's in the house. We'll do it live. And Arco, ding ding third. Oh my God, this was like 25 minutes ago. Sorry guys. Ding ding curve to the moon today. I'm glad I put 11,000 more CVX CRV last night. Curve is pretty cool, especially in the last 2 days. Evo Llama's coming. I look forward to that. I'm getting like 4 or 5 of them. I think that'd be nice. I think this transitory deflation will crater assets and equities. Of course, that's exactly what the entire intro was, which is probably the time frame in which you commented. My man, Wave, good day, Noah, and fellow people of the crypto space. Always a pleasure. Yellow Mellow, possible transitory deflationary event. That's exactly what is history tells us will occur. Chris, good morning, Noah. You call curve net deflationary. What makes you feel people reinvest their curve earn? Well, it's not about what makes people want to reinvest their curve earned. They are. That's what's happening. It's a net deflationary protocol, more or less, between YVE CRV and CDX CRV. And the fact that it's a yield bearing instrument. Folks shy away from the 9%, 10%, whatever it's been, three curve yield from CVXCRV. That's massive because that's just not outperforming debasement. That's a revenue stream. That's a business. Whereas the asset itself, curve, is likely to significantly outperform debasement, appreciating at greater than 22% a year, because that's going to follow suit with the entire crypto space, Ethereum narrative, crypto narrative, and I expect the curve asset to significantly outperform markets. If you get 10% three curve yield, that's extraordinary. Mark's in the house. Good morning, Charlie. Charlie G. Johnny for. Hi, Noah. Can you explain recent decrease in price of YFDI? I was planning to get my position on since 74% stake, but I'm now glad I didn't. YFDI. What's YFDI? Is that Yearn die? Price decrease or yield decrease you might be referring to. I need more clarification. Matthew, thanks for having us. Always a pleasure. Mark, denominate in BTC or Ethereum. Yeah, I don't think about denomination much anymore because it's all relative. You could denominate in a variety of things, including the Fed balance sheet or M2. What does it mean? And that's kind of why I like denominating in percent yield. I denominate in cash flow nowadays, boys and girls. How much cash flow are you making? And that's how you denominate your degree of success. Yellow Mel, imagine the debt ceiling was more useful concept with currency backed by gold. Yeah, everything they're doing is perverted. And the sad thing and the thing we should have empathy for is the persons that kind of just partake in the system that act like everything's normal. It's not normal. There's nothing normal about what's going on. Heirlooms in the house, always a pleasure. Patrick, good morning, Cap and chat peeps. Anyone interested in Gemini credit card? Yes, very much so. Second it comes online, I am going to consolidate all credit functionality to that single card. Jonah, morning, Noah. Where do you buy T-bills? Brokerage accounts. You need Schwab or E-Trade or Fidelity type stuff. Brady, hello. Hello. Warren, welcome back. No, we missed you yesterday. Yeah, back in action. Tuesday, back to normal. Had a day off. Beautiful day yesterday. It's good. Good to take a couple minutes with the family. KG, deflationary event already happened. Melt up from here. Yeah, you got to follow Stephen Van Meter and a bunch of the other boys. They're really smart. And the deflationary event has always happened. Boom, 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 boom. There will be always another deflationary event. Always, always, always. And then they just debase again and they paper over it and it keeps going up. So it did happen and it will happen. Again, it's the way it works. Mix, mix. Hey, Cap. Always a pleasure. Matthew, talking to my parents is very hard without breaking it down into simple, understandable terms, but it's worth it. I feel like I'm helping them out and protecting them from the corrupted system. I go with perverted more than corrupted, but yeah, it's corrupt as well. Mark, hey Noah, amount burnt is currently 20% according to bit speed tripping, so it's not deflationary as most claim. Ethereum? What's not deflationary, my friend? Is it Ethereum? Because um, they're not burning yet until London is released. Matthew, they're so blinded by the years of being told to save in a bank account or retirement accounts. When the net deflationary debasement comes in, they panic when they see their value cut in half. Yeah, because they're saving all this money. They have the savings, and yeah, now they want to, do something. Like home prices are up like double digits this year alone. Or there's instead of $100 checkout at the supermarket, now it's 130. It's pretty demoralizing and painful to watch the vast majority of the general public not understand how to traverse this. And you traverse it, but as we've been discussing, and there's a variety of ways to traverse it. Particularly, I'm not. My methodology is not the end all be all of how to do this, but the concepts that I talk about are how you figure out how to do it. How do you handle a deflationary event? How do you handle this, the intended function of the central banks to trigger structural inflation over time? I mean, just look at this chart. Deflation, 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 but macro over the longer period of time, the time horizon, it's inflation. It's just inflationary. Um, so interestingly enough, if you denominate in like the SPX and you hold just S&P, SPY, you just hold SPY for 30 years, denominate a car in SPY, the car's price is probably going down. So denominated in SPY, cars are getting cheaper. So everything is relative, and that's why we can't just denominate in dollars or something else or Bitcoin and Ethereum, because it's all relative. And the most relative terminologies are deflation and inflation. You can't just say there's inflation. It doesn't work like that. Inflation is relative to something, a specific frame of reference or a specific point of interest or topic of conversation. So there's much more context involved when talking about that terminology. Um, yeah, Matthew, chipping away at them one step at a time. But we're here for them, and I'm here for you guys. Mix, mix. Adjust DeFi life is hard to do. Yeah, you need more because you can't really have deflation protection in the DeFi space. So you need a little bit more than just the DeFi life, but it works. Like I've everything I've been discussing for the last couple months with cash flow methodologies. You can have a serious income from just DeFi. Justin, will the three curve APR increase or decrease daily with transaction fees that Curve brings in? So imagine a 10x in daily transaction volume on Curve. Three curve is going to go 10x. You're going to make 10x more money. So if you're making $200 a week on three curve, and curve goes to $5 billion a day in transaction volume, all of a sudden your $200 a week is going to be $2,000 a week. YF Die Finance? I don't know what it is, my friend. Have you looked into Akash Network? If so, what's your thoughts on the future plans for the stakers? Never heard of it. Yes, Ethereum. That's right, Mark. Stacking. Hey, Noah, did you ever solidify your tax plan structure to maximize returns for your business? Apologize if I missed it in a previous stream. Yeah, so the way I'm handling it is revenue stream. Um, the dollars are salary, and I use the dollars to not only cut a salary but accumulate tax obligations. So I have an account, a crypto account, accumulating dollars because I have to pay tax. And every time I take dollar profit as salary, I accumulate the tax obligation. So much more of a business mindset, the way I'm thinking of things. It's not about buy low, sell high, because I'm not buying or selling. The revenue just comes in from yield. I pretty much have fixed positions for I can't even remember how long. And these assets are working assets that produce revenue streams. does buying CRV put me in a position to get paid the fees you speak of, or do I need to get convex to be rewarded the fees? So CRV, you would have to lock it in one of three places. See, VECRV gives you three curve yield weekly. So I have, then you also get voting rights with the E curve. But the most lucrative place right now to clock curve is CVX CRV, which then you stake on the convex platform, which will give you CRV, three curve, and CVX yield, incentivized yield. It's like 60-70%, give or take. So that's the most lucrative place to manage your CRV position in a CVX CRV derivative asset staked on the convex platform. That's my preferred source of yield nowadays, all things considered. All things considered. This buying mark according to testnet figures. Not familiar with it, my. Oh yeah, according to testnet figures. Okay, so maybe it's not net deflationary for Ethereum. I understand what you're saying, Mark, but which is why I don't have the largest Ethereum position or the largest Bitcoin. I barely have any Bitcoin or Ethereum anymore. All I care about is cash flow. I want more revenue, and that's what I'm focusing on. Curve yield on convex is crazy. What causes the fluctuation in yield percent? Well, you're probably looking at the dollar denominated yield percent. So the dollar denominated yield percent is misleading. What you got to look at is the quantity of assets you're getting over a period of time. So that's what's most pertinent. So the yield percent is highly fluctuating because the price of CRV and the price of CVX are quite volatile. You might find David Hunter on Twitter interesting, contrarian mindset, calling him a final melt up at the moment. Okay. And what do you think happens after a melt up? Deflationary implosion. So the whole point is you never know when a currency crisis is going to occur. Look at these giant drops. These are massive, massive contractions in economic activity. So let it be a melt up. But do you really think you're going to sell the top? No one's going to sell the top. I have no interest in trying. And anyone that's going to try is not going to do it. So what you need to be is in positions prepared for both deflation and inflation. And that's exactly why we talk about things the way we do. And bear in mind, Yellow, calling for something. It's subjective. I see plenty of reasons for a melt up. I also see plenty of reasons for a deflationary implosion. There's brilliant minds that talk about both sides of the coin. So the question becomes, or the realization is, you need both. You need deflation protection and inflation protection, and depending on what plays out, what transpires, will allow you to assess how well you allocated capital beforehand, prepared for the macroeconomic shocks. All I know is I want to be prepared for a market contraction, and I am. And I also want to be prepared for the central banks around the world to screw citizens by debasing the currency. I am. And that's probably the best way to express how I handle financials. I'm a worst case scenario kind of guy, which means if I have my bases covered for everything, that's how I sleep well at night. Mixed. Explaining it to fam when they don't quite get it is hard to do. Very much so, my friend. Johnny for can you stake CRV? There is no point in holding CRV without staking it. It's a very valuable asset that produces revenue on a daily basis when locked on the Convex platform in a derivative asset called CVX CRV. You put CRV into CVX CRV. That's how that works. Scary ski slope, Mark. That's right. Love and Convex tempted to trade my ETH for more CRV. Tough choices, my friend. El Captain is actually accessible THX for your help in Discord. I recommend this to anyone trying to wrap their head around planning ahead. Yeah, we could always do better, my friend. Yeah, not necessarily saying one thing or the other is going to happen, just interesting to follow all different things on FinTwit. That's right, Yellow Mellow. It's exactly the case. A lot of smart minds trying to figure out what the heck's going to happen, whether it's deflation, inflation. But I don't care because I'm covered for everything with the T bills, and I clearly have inflation protection with the crypto assets. Ding ding, Mark, put your Ethereum in Aave, bar USDC, and buy more curve. Well, do what everyone has to come to their own choices of what to do to best express their view of the markets. That's what's most important. So, Mark, cheers, ding. I'm torn. Yes, we all are torn. This is not easy. Um, and you'll only know in hindsight how well you did. So, what I like to remind myself is we have to do something. Because if we don't do anything, it's a guaranteed loss. Can't keep cash in a bank account. You will lose. There is no way to save for a future. Savings bonds will not do anything for a future. Cash will not do anything for a future. We have to deploy our capital. And it's like from a financial advisor standpoint, because that's like base case. That's base case. And then the complexity, all the work and time to figure out what to do is where the hell do you deploy the capital? So the US government, the financial system, the central banks have forced us into a position where we absolutely 100% have to deploy capital. Otherwise, we're going to be UBI and FedCoin. They're going to be airdropping FedCoin to us and we're going to be playing by their rules and their system. That's not something I'm necessarily wanting to do. Let's wrap it up. Tuesday, July 6th, 12:11 p.m. As always, I thank everyone for joining. This was a nice, broad topic today, talking about macro financials and how to it's not just crypto, boys and girls. So to understand the crypto space, or at least to attack the crypto markets, we really need to understand macro financials. We need to also be financially responsible and consider the reality of deflation. And that's a meaningful component of the macro financial system. Um, there's no easy way to handle all of this. A lot of this is trial and error, and you only know in hindsight how well you did. So for yourself, for your families, for your kids, for everyone, we have to do. We have to make choices, and they're not going to be easy choices. And there's no perfect choices. There's no one that's going to tell you that the asset you bought is going to change everything. It's the best asset. You're going to win. No one's going to tell you that because no one knows. I own a lot of Curve. I might be making a massive mistake. I'll only know in hindsight. But what's most important is, can I sleep at night? And I sleep well at night. And so don't put yourself in a position of anxiety where you're worried or you're fearful. Don't do that. So, again, thanks everyone for joining, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Y'all have a good one now. Peace.